professors, students, friends, colleagues, family, everybody, thank you so much for coming today for my design talk on Good Intentions Design Exhibition. Most of you may know me, but just in case you don't, my name is Félicia Barrett. I'm an MFA candidate in Visual Communication Design here at Purdue. Today I'll present my exhibition. Most of you are actually in that section, so you're all set up for success there. Good Intentions is an exploration of design as an approach to sustainability. So first I'd like to outline what I'll be going over today. I'll start off with a brief introduction to design and sustainability to help frame the works within the exhibition and more clearly discuss the proposed framework approach. The works in the exhibition are organized by are organized and curated to reflect three different stages of approach to sustainability. Over on this far wall is designed to inform. The left part of this section of the wall is dedicated to design to persuade. And then lastly, this section over here is design to advocate. And I'll go over each of those sections and talk about the projects that are included therein. Afterward, I'll give a brief closing remark and I'll open it to questions and answers. So, to start with my introduction, what is sustainability? It's really not as simple as its definition or origin. The word etymologically derived from the Latin sustenere, meaning to hold, keep, or support. Sustainability refers to the ability to meet the needs of the current generation without sacrificing the needs of future generations, really upholding to support long-term prosperity and well-being. To put that in the context of design, sustainability in design involves creative decisions and evaluation of design outcomes and their impact on the quadruple bottom line. And that includes the economic, the social, the environmental considerations, as well as the purpose of a design intent. The sustainable value of the design solution cannot be evaluated in isolation from the original purpose or intent of a design outcome. So for design to be sustainable, it must consider all aspects, the who, the what, the when, the where, in all processes and decisions from the concept to the end of the product life cycles. Using a systems thinking approach, although much of the research on sustainability has been conducted from different disciplinary perspectives, there's still no clear consensus on what constitutes as a truly sustainable system. So sustainable methodologies have a conceptual framework or guiding set of principles. But ultimately, sustainability comes down to the impact of the design outcome. The role of designers is to be problem identifiers and solvers. Sorry, guys. They have a social and environmental responsibility. So while sustainability in visual communication design is still vague and struggling to be adopted as regular practice, there are opportunities for adopting frameworks or tools to open paths to more research and exploration in sustainable design solutions. My approach stems from that fourth pillar I mentioned earlier, being the purpose of the design intent in combination with considerations of people, planet, and profit. The intention of the exhibition is to interpret these levels of informing, persuading, and advocating as an exploration in sustainability to approach different topics from different angles and move toward a more profound understanding and consideration. So the intention of my exhibition is not necessarily to present a definitive theory or model of sustainable design, but rather to stimulate consideration within the design community and to suggest an approach to engaging in complex topics in visual communication design. The first stage, designed to inform, approaches sustainability to identify problems where there is lack of or not readily available information. At first glance, it seems simple to contextualize sustainability in visual communication design by the choice of basic material for the final design output. Ultimately, when first approaching sustainability, designers find themselves focusing on the material aspects and their negative impacts on the environment. The environment is usually a major component of sustainability discussions, which stems from the early use in forestry and agriculture to combat limited supplies of trees for wood production. So large focus is on environmental implications due to its heavy material usage in print design. From this point of view, I researched what aspects of design cause the most harm to the environment, and trying to find what information could be useful in mitigating those problems. The primary culprit here is actually packaging waste. The potential impacts of addressing this issue has really great potential, as it comes as no surprise that packaging waste accounts for nearly 30% of total waste generation. This is the largest contributor to generated waste annually at a whopping 80.08 million tons compared to durable, non-durable, and organic waste. So in my exploration in this topic, especially with my background as a packaging designer before I came here to Purdue, the problems I came across were two different things. One was material choices, the lack of conscious alternative material choices specifically toward packaging design and how those choices contribute to the overall waste generation, and issues with little knowledge of how recycling actually works and how to correctly identify materials used in product packaging. Misidentifying these materials often cause these items to end up in landfills when they could have been appropriately recycled, despite the consumer's best intentions. I've included two different works in this section for Design to Inform, the first of which is an infographic called Unpacking Sustainability. This project came at a time when things were still under COVID lockdown, and there was a great increase of online ordering and a jump in packaging waste material due to that. This project was chosen as a direction to communicate the quantitative information regarding packaging and waste materials. So, no packaging was truly harmed in the making of this poster. This was repurposing some of the items I had around in my apartment at the time to try to reuse those materials. But essentially it's to communicate the recyclability of individual materials and what materials end up in landfills so that it can be an informative point for consumers to maybe choose more sustainable products. But likewise for designers to be able to evaluate maybe some alternative materials to use. Another touch point for Design to Inform is an application concept that I developed using the same research I used from the Environmental Protection Agency in regards to all the information about the individual material products and packaging components. This application is designed just to inform the user. It includes features like specific product information and a conceptual design where the user is able to scan a barcode and identify from a conceptual database what components of the packaging are in that product. This allows options for the consumer to then decide which parts of the package to take apart and properly dispose. If you have time after this design talk, please take a closer look at this project. There are other features that include proper disposal locations for difficult to dispose of items, as well as a sustainability rating system. So in the product database, there are specific criteria that it evaluates in order to determine how sustainable a product is. The next section here in this gallery is Design to Persuade. This takes a shift of the focus from informing of the problem and really trying to incorporate empathy to get consumers and designers alike to act on these issues. So While the first Design to Inform projects were focused on the packaging materials themselves, this section focuses on the actual impacts those materials have on the environment, more specifically plastic waste pollution and overfishing. So my touch point to explore this kind of topic in sustainability is an environmental campaign that incorporates 2 poster designs and an application concept. The 2 poster designs each feature topics and statistics on overfishing and plastic pollution. My intent was to use really contrasting and visceral colors like cyan and red to draw attention immediately upon passing by the viewers. The application can also be accessed by the QR code in the bottom right of each poster, but I also have an explanation in between the 2. The application that coincides with that takes the imagery from the poster designs to continue to elaborate those visual communication tactics in getting the user to really feel like they're being a part of the solution. Upon opening the application, the screen shows an immediate countdown of the plastic waste rising to cover the screen, and the numbers rising to calculate how many tons of plastic are entering the ocean in the time that the application has to load. Within the application, there are opportunities for users to collaborate and earn points that then turn into donations to World Wildlife Foundation and other ocean cleanup brand events. So this was the touch point for Design to Persuade. So ultimately, this was incorporating not only the information and research done on the material design, but also how to get this a step further, because while knowing has value, it's not enough to then commit to action. The next section I have here, this is really the penultimate project, shifting focus from not only the materials and the impacts on the environment, not only designed to inform on sustainability, and not only designed to persuade, is designed to advocate. And this is a really important subject to me, especially when this project all started stemming from the whole packaging design concept, and I was really curious to see what sort of claims and colors are used in these eco-friendly packages. So I did a lot of field research for this one, which actually led me to find that a lot of those products make claims that are not truly sustainable if you research the brand and their production methods and even the materials that they use. So this is actually a tactic called greenwashing, and it is an important thing to discuss in visual communication design because we should have accountability and responsibility to communicate truth and true sustainability instead of deceiving audiences and potentially have harmful impact in the world around us. So from these packaging designs, I was able to determine certain keywords and phrases and imagery that are used in greenwash tactics. Oftentimes you'll find a shampoo bottle that says 100% recyclable. It's often in a plastic bottle. You'll see eco-friendly laundry detergent, and it'll have that wonderful green leaf slapped on the packaging. These are all visual images that designers choose to try to communicate something that it's really not. So my design solution to combat this is a whole branding design. So on top of the greenwashing problem that deceives users in the market, there's also, because of this deception, lack of trust and access to a vetted product database of sustainable products. So there's really not enough market reach in the area. Another point that needs to be mentioned too in the sections of Design to Inform and Design to Persuade, there's still a gap between users and committing to sustainable action. So there's a design intervention that can meet those needs and address that issue. So my proposed solution is a multi-touch point brand design called Motive and Motive Market. This includes an overall branding design that incorporates and embeds sustainability into its values, and also provides an application touch point to help consumers navigate the deceptive market full of greenwashing, and also allow them to reach and shop sustainably, as well as a touch point to help keep them motivated and track new sustainable habits. So a little background about the Motive branding. The name Motive actually has two meanings. Motive being the hidden intent behind something. You might hear this in a lot of crime shows, the suspect's motive, likened to the deceptive tactics of greenwashing, but also motivate. And that is really what the brand message of Motive is to motivate others to adopt sustainable lifestyle habits, as well as put their money where their mouth is and embed sustainability within their brand practices. So here are a few of the brand values that Motive has to eliminate confusion about product sustainability, to create an avenue for package reuse and disposal, to help users adopt sustainable habits and practices, make an overall positive impact on the planet, and instigate change not only on a global level, but starting at the community level. And lastly, and not least importantly, is shed light on greenwash marketing. So, Design to Advocate was actually quite challenging because it had me consider all sorts of implications of the design process. So what started off with a logo design, which I'll go back to the slide here. The circular imagery here is just the intent to reflect the whole reuse, recycle. The check mark aspect here is also, checking a mark off the to-do list, as well as the very subtle green leaf item, which, not to be stereotypical, it does communicate some eco-friendliness, but the whole point of the Motive brand is to make that statement truthful. When deciding upon the brand colors, that opened up some really interesting questions, because this started off as a digital application, and most of the time when people think about sustainability, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, they focus on the material aspect. So what can a digital application really do to impact the environment? Well, depending on the type of screen you're using, like for instance, I've got my iPhone 11 here, has an OLED screen, which means it actually can be impacted by color usage in the amount of energy it consumes. So that was one of the things I really wanted to consider when I was choosing my original brand colors. So right below, right here I have my main brand colors, to the side secondary. And here you see a chart of different levels of energy consumption that these OLED screens have. White consumes the absolute most amount of energy. So to offset that, and I'm sorry, the projector kind of washes it out, I have an off-white. That's why drop shadows are useful. I have an off-white color to kind of minimize that impact, and I left the white color to be for small amounts of text for legibility. So the green, or the next color that consumes the most amount of most amount of energy is blue. So I tried to minimize the luminosity of the blues that I used in the application, and then greens, reds, and blacks were the ones that consume the least amount of energy. So instead of veering away from the traditional green color that's used in sustainable design or eco design, I decided to embrace that aspect and have that work to my advantage in reducing the amount of energy consumption. My typefaces here are Montserrat and Ubuntu. Montserrat for main headings and Ubuntu for more body text. These are both Google fonts, which help minimize loading times on screens, as they are most accessible on any device. So It lowers the loading times, which ups the usability, and that is a criteria of digital sustainable design. So the application itself has quite a bit of functionality to it. This is a conceptual design, so it is not yet realized, but I'm hopeful for the future. This also includes a scan function, but instead of highlighting the QR code, it analyzes the visual design of the packaging product itself to help identify instances of greenwash tactics. When the user scans, and you're more than welcome to look at the walkthrough here. When the user scans the products on the shelf, it isolates the product that the consumer wants more information on, and it detects the greenwash tactics that are used in that packaging and lists out the specific criteria on the screen. So that includes, again, false use of green imagery, vague statements of sustainability, and also identifies the brand logo, which can hide deceitful brand practices under parent brands and child brands, because branding can have a multi-network of sub-brands within it. Next, after the greenwash detection, they're able to view a sustainability report, which breaks down the individual brand product's impact on the quadruple bottom line. So it includes analysis on the social, economical, environmental, and purposeful concepts that I mentioned earlier. The second feature that the app addresses the problem of is the sustainable habit building. So a little bit of my research, I found that habit stacking is actually a pretty useful way to get people to adopt new habits in general. So I thought it would be really good to apply that to sustainable habit building. So the user is able to choose their own habits, and this is all based off of a buddy intervention. So within the app, and I do mention it on the posters here, you're able to choose a buddy that you can grow and level up and take care of essentially and customize as you complete your sustainable tasks. You're able to track that. You're also able to quantify the impact that you're having on the local level and global levels. The choice of buddy really depends on up to you. It includes a wide variety of globally endangered species, but determined upon the user's location also provides local endangered animals as a choice as well. So I went ahead in my app walkthrough and in my screens, I kind of did a little bit of research on those animals as far as the state of Indiana, since we're here in West Lafayette. So that includes the piping plover, the Indiana bat, and the bumblebee. So all of those are options that you can see through the walkthrough right now. Great timing. And so that intervention is just to help have a little bit more interactivity and engagement for the user to complete their sustainable habits and build upon that habit stacking. Lastly, this is kind of one of, not necessarily the minor feature, but they are also able to shop sustainable products through the shop function. But this is actually where the brand kind of evolves. So not only can consumers view sustainable products in their database, the Motive brand also creates touch points for markets that are out of reach of sustainable products in the form of a pop-up market called Motive Market. So this concept is entirely designed to be integrated into existing local farmers markets that provide options for purchasing of sustainable products in a zero waste concept, as well as providing an avenue for the disposal of hard to dispose of items. So that can include hazardous materials like, for instance, syringes, and sharps containers, tech disposal, so old phones and computer monitors and the like, which you really shouldn't try to recycle. And then lastly, mixed waste recycling, which entails those really more complex items that people think are recyclable but end up in landfill anyways. Some examples of this are your deodorants, They are composed of plastics, but there are other mechanisms within that complicate the recycling process. And this really applies to all sorts of different packaging designs, because you need to take into the consideration not only the material used to box the product, but the ink that's on it, whether foils are used, and how it's actually all put together, because a lot of adhesives are not just completely render the material unrecyclable. So, hence the motive market. Within motive market, this is the motive branding for the products that are available inside, and this is just basically just an insight on the key touch points here. The whole concept for motive market is to have these sustainable products that are available in dispensers or self-serve stations. So people have the option to come in with their own containers to use. Labeling has been designed for each of the products, where the user can then weigh or measure the quantity of the product that they want, and then they can then purchase it. However, I acknowledge that not everybody wants to bring in their own containers. So another one of the brand touch points, which I do not have on the slide, but you are completely able to view at this display in two-dimensional form if you so choose. But if you use your phone to scan the QR codes, you are able to view the products in augmented reality. And one of the main reasons I chose to display these products that way is because I think augmented reality has some big implications for sustainable reasons. This can minimize the amount of waste used to present design solutions to clients. So if the client doesn't like the way a product is, scale-wise, aesthetically, you can always go back and redesign and get approval before any mock-up production. So ultimately, here are my closing remarks. I will thank you at the end, I promise. My closing remarks are thus. So my approach to exploring the topic as complex as sustainability is to take it as an approach of what visual communication does. Visual communication's purpose is to create a design that informs or persuades or advocates. So using that kind of framework, I was able to choose a topic that had sustainable connotations, and it helped guide me through that research process and led me to several design outcomes and touch points. And I do think that this approach can be applied to other topics of sustainability, but other complex and wicked problems. So with that, that's the end of my closing remarks. So really thank you all for coming today, and I will go ahead and open up for questions and answers.
I'm over here, so I have a question if you guys can hear me over there. First off, really good job. There's a lot of people in here, and I think you did an amazing job at covering everything that you had to cover. But my question is, so with your motive project, I know you talked about how you used the colors or chose the colors because of their sustainable problems, especially on the digital side. But if you saw any of these products sitting on a shelf, what sort of, I guess, emotions were you trying to kind of put off with your color choices if they were sitting on a shelf, and what kind of makes them stand out? I think I'd like to, I know you talked about it in class, but I think I'd like to hear you talk about it now.
I love that question. So the primary purpose of product packaging is to grab the consumer's attention right off the shelf. So with the implications of sustainable inks and bio inks, those do exist. You are not actually limited on vibrance and color. You are to a certain extent, but not in a way that really inhibits you from displaying your product design as aesthetically pleasing or playful or whatever emotion you want to convey. So if you take a look here, my really whole goal for the design of those sustainable products was to put, first off, health and beauty products they need to be able to convey the sort of sense and ingredients within it. So I really wanted to pull off of that with the brand colors that Motive provides me to create a playful and clean and fun kind of design. Originally, when I went through several iterations for this project, my branding for the print side and for especially the application side, using dark mode with the dark background and light text on to save energy consumption, really makes for a dark and heavy design, which really doesn't read well with product packaging for health and beauty products. So that was the reasoning behind that. Room full of people, there we go.
Yeah. So a lot of these projects, and also I want to echo Taylor's point, great, I really enjoyed the presentation. But what I was interested in is that a lot of these projects really focus on the consumer side of things, like how to change consumer behavior. And I guess I wonder, sort of a lot of these choices are also happening upstream, right? And I wonder if you see a part of Motive that looks upward to that kind of corporate, sort of the decisions being made at the manufacturer level and how to sort of transform those decisions upstream.
100%. That's really why I think like a brand design has really great implications on looking at issues from an all-rounded side, because if you're going to tote sustainability, you need to embed that in your brand. A brand is not just its products or its design, its logo. It's not even just its message. It is really its intention at its core. So that is why I chose kind of a branding position, because yeah, a lot of the time the responsibility is left to the consumer. But I think branding design really opened an opportunity to really accept that responsibility as a designer myself, so yeah.
Actually, great job with your presentation. Really clear and beautifully displayed. Now, I have actually not a question, more like a comment. I know you have a lot of interest in education and teaching, and what I find really interesting here is that you provide a very nice framework that could actually be incorporated in the curriculum in the design sustainability, in the design program. And you do not have a lot of classes. I don't know any classes necessarily with a good model for it yet, right? So, so I think that the work you've done provides a nice framework in the context of graphic design education. And I think that one of the things that needs to be addressed in this as you move forward is the business side of it too, or like how to engage the folks actually creating the products too, because you're focusing more on the design aspect and consumer both, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a module dealing with how to influence those makers would be very interesting. But I find this to be an incredible framework with a lot of applications. As you move forward in teaching, I think you do have the systems you need to create a sustainability graphic design course. I think this is great.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You got another one for us?
Just like a kind of question comment. So when it comes to branding especially, or even just applications, again, like Jennifer said, the consumer is a big part of it. So I see you as a very empathetic designer, meaning you have to really understand your consumer and your target audience. Do you think that where you are now as a designer that you'll continue that way, or do you think that your design values and principles that you have now are going to continue to change?
That's a really good question. Wow, with my background working for a die-cast car collector company that like had so much packaging waste to going to grad school and going through these projects, exploring the topics of sustainability, I've really learned a lot and I've grown a lot in that aspect. But that being said, it's also caused me to realize that there's still a long ways to go. Ideally, I will definitely continue to be an empathetic designer, but I don't think I will stop the growth, because again, like this is an approach to exploration on topics of sustainability. It really touches the iceberg. With these complex and wicked problems, there's definitely more work to do.
Yeah.
So my question is, so obviously you have very like many aspects to the app design with the buddy system and like the ability to scan, but focusing more on kind of like the market aspect. Since obviously you mentioned like a lot of packaging waste in terms of like ordering online, when you were like designing these packaging brands and the market aspect, how were you envisioning that, I guess, and kind of explain more like if that were to be actualized, how you would envision it?
Like how do you mean how I envision it exactly?
In terms of like, would it be like more online ordering? Would it be like a physical store? Like, would it be a mix and kind of your ideas going into designing the packaging?
Excellent question. So the shop function of the Motive app was intended to get sustainable market reach to consumers that don't have that readily available. However, that being said, with the online ordering, if in a perfect world there'd be a great sustainable transportation system, it's not there yet. Which is why I think the pop-up markets are really important, because that has the ability to reach communities that are out of reach of sustainable products and don't necessarily have the app on their phone. The market itself was also intended to be more of an in-app event for users that do use the Motive app. So that way they can continue building on their sustainable habit building through the application at the physical pop-up market store. That being said, the pop-up market store is there also to get audiences that are outside of my target reach. So those users that don't have apps, they can still access those products.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Felicia.
Thank you all for being here, seriously.
And go talk to Felicia, okay, directly too. Feel free to interact with the designer, okay?